Hey team, and welcome to another video in our Astrological Magical Elections video series. Today we're going to talk about those magical electional opportunities that are going to be available to us between the Libra Full Moon on March 28th and the Aries New Moon on April 11th. So we do have a decent amount of things kind of going on for us these next couple of weeks, but as is tradition, there's always going to be that one location, it seems, that's going to draw the short straw, and that location is going to be North American continent, which is only going to have one electional opportunity, whereas Western Europe and Australia are both going to have three. So we're going to go ahead and dive right into it, talking about Western Europe first, who won our draw. So going ahead and taking a look at our first electional opportunity here, it's going to be for March 31st at around 11 o'clock at night. This chart here is set for 2304. And this is going to be an opportunity for a 19th Lunar Mansion talisman. The 19th Lunar Mansion is a little unique in that it is a spirit that is allied primarily with female or female-identified bodies, and that it has certain powers to help with health issues that are unique to those bodies. However, that's not its only power, and what we are going to lean into more today is the 19th Lunar Mansion's power to protect or to safeguard individuals from harm, particularly from magical harm. So if this is a situation where you would like to have something that you could fall back on when you need it, or if you are in a situation where you need it for whatever reason, because people are mean, this can be a really great opportunity. So taking a look at our electional opportunity for this talisman, we've got the moon placed here in the 19th Lunar Mansion, conjoined the ascendant, where we always prefer her to be, and at this time she's applying a sextile to Saturn in Aquarius in the third house. And a lot of times Saturn is one of those planets that I'm kind of iffy on when it comes to situations like this, but I think that Saturn can actually be very useful when it comes to like reinforcing boundaries, and I'm a little less concerned about anything that Saturn might do kind of more underhanded, with Saturn being more dignified. Usually my concern here is that a lot of times I feel like there's this idea that's kind of popular in kind of like beginning astromagical practices, that Saturn is a good planet to go to for protection. And that's not always right. Saturn is a great planet to go to if you want to be left alone, if you want people to be afraid of you. So I think that those are caveats to remember or to consider if you want to move forward with having Saturn be like a more prominent force in protective type magics, because there are better ways to do it, but at the same time, depending on your exact circumstances, and what you're working with, what you've got going on, and how vulnerable you feel like you are, having people leave you alone because they're afraid of you might not be a bad deal, but people do weird things to things that they're afraid of. So I guess that would be kind of my warning there more in general. I think this is very helpful. These kinds of talismans can be very helpful, since especially we're leaning more on the 19th Lunar Mansion spirit than Saturn in general. So this might not be like a very great place to kind of put this caveat, I guess, because it's not 100% applicable, I think. But if you're an individual who, is looking for Saturn-type talismans, and maybe this is a conversation to have next time we find a Saturn-type talisman, who is looking for a Saturn talisman for protection and things like that, Saturn might not always be the best option for this. There are better planets, I think. So our next electional opportunity for the Western European continent is going to be on April 4th, here around 2:30 in the morning, which is what this chart is set for. And this is going to be an opportunity for a 22nd Lunar Mansion talisman. So the 22nd Lunar Mansion, because we're dealing with a waning moon phase right now, is one that we're going to utilize more for freedom and escape. Obviously, this is something that is a little bit more subjective, but one that hopefully people will be able to utilize to great effect, whether that's somebody escaping from a bad habit, escaping from a difficult situation, or even a potentially dangerous situation. The 22nd Lunar Mansion can be very good for that. It can even be something more mundane, like escaping from a boring job or anything like that. There's a lot of freedom here for this talisman to be utilized effectively. So just kind of like put your thinking cap on and get creative with it and see what you might be able to, free yourself from in some way. But taking a look at our election here, we've got the moon placed in the first house in the 22nd Lunar Mansion, just like we like it. And at this time, she is applying a square to the sun. So square is obviously a little bit more of a difficult aspectual contact, but better than nothing, better than opposition. And squares with the moon and sun are not really as bad as some of the other squares could be. Like squares between Saturn and Mars, we're not doing that. But with the sun, that's not so bad. All in all, it's a pretty fine election. We have the Lord of the first house as Saturn, because Capricorn is in the ascendant, and Saturn's just chilling down here in Aquarius. kind of close to this conjunction of Jupiter, not afflicted by Mars, doing fine. Sort of the big event for this 2-week period happens just a few hours later at around 6:30 a.m., and this is going to be for an opportunity for a Sun in Aries planetary talisman, so a talisman of the Sun in its exaltation of Aries, which is pretty nice. We haven't had this for a few years because for the past 2.5 years or so, we've had Saturn and Capricorn casting squares to Aries, to the sign of Aries, making us, not able to really utilize any Sun and Aries talismans for fear of bringing in a Saturn square. Along with it, now Saturn has shifted over into Aquarius, which has opened up Aries for the Sun to be in, and to be in unafflicted and give us potentials for talismans. But now we blocked off the sign of Leo because now Saturn is in opposition from it. So we traded out Sun and Leo talismans for Sun and Aries talismans, which is a downgrade in my opinion, but it's fine. But it's been a couple of years since we've been able to get it. And this is actually the first opportunity for a Sun and Aries talisman that we've had since Saturn moved into Aquarius this winter. So this is kind of exciting. So if you're an individual who's looking to bring in more solar influence into their lives, here you go. Here's an opportunity, but only if you're in Western Europe, I guess. Here's a fun opportunity for that. For the North American continent, this moon will already be past the square of the Sun before we're able to do anything. So that kind of sucks for us, but hopefully there will be more later on down the line. But taking a look at our election here, we're focused on the Sun, and we want several things. We want the Sun to be in a sign that it does well in. The Sun is in Aries, so that's a check. We want the Sun to be very angular, and we have that with the Sun conjoined the ascendant here. We want it to be the Sun's day or the Sun's hour, and this is actually sunrise on a Sunday, so it is both the Sun's day and the Sun's hour, even though you don't see that marked on this chart right now. My program shows the days and hours kind of off to the corner where I don't have this, or I don't have it visible. And finally, you want to have the moon applying an aspect to that planet. And we do have that with the moon applying this close square to the Sun in about 2 degrees. And squares in planetary talismans are not all that ideal. You definitely want to prefer sextiles or trines. But there's a quote in Bonatti, which I think is really important, and that I say several times, or fairly often. And it's, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Don't let wanting its trine aspect keep you from utilizing square aspects if you need them. And this is a fine situation where we can do that. We can utilize the square aspect and still get a powerful, very effective Sun and Aries talisman. It's just sextiles and trines would have made it better, and that's fine. And it's fine to think that, and it's fine to know that. But you definitely want to act on things when you can. This Sun and Aries talisman opportunity is actually a little bit more interesting because it also is the Sun conjoined Venus at the same time, so we kind of get to see Venus's more benefic energy kind of bolster the Sun a little bit more and bonify it to an extent, so that's kind of exciting. And at the same time, the Sun is not afflicted by Mars or Saturn. So all in all, a pretty solid Sun and Aries talisman, and a nice one to have after a couple of years of not having opportunities for it. So switching gears and leaving Western Europe behind, moving into the North American charts, we only have one to talk about, and that is going to be an opportunity for a 23rd Lunar Mansion talisman, which takes place on April 4th at around 2:30 in the morning. Set for this chart set for 2:36, and looking at this chart, take a step back. So the 23rd Lunar Mansion is a mansion that is primarily about devouring and swallowing things. So we actually like it a lot when it comes to waning moon stuff, or the waning moon phase, because swallowing, destroying, and getting rid of things is exactly what the waning moon wants to do. So if you have things that you want to get rid of, that whether that's physical things, whether that's mental or emotional processes, or feelings of gunk, whatever, things like that, the 23rd Lunar Mansion can really help you process that and help you get rid of it, help you turn it into something a little bit more productive and useful. The 23rd Lunar Mansion can also be utilized for healing in that it kind of keeps within its swallowing theme, and the 23rd Lunar Mansion is a mansion that is mostly utilized for, you can use it very literally for diseases of the throat and mouth. That's cool. Or you can take it a little bit more metaphorically, in that the 23rd Lunar Mansion is about consuming an illness and treating it that way. So it's removing something that's already present rather than utilizing it for preventative medicine. So taking a look at our election here, we've got The moon on the ascendant in the 23rd lunar mansion, which is always really great. At this time, she is applying that square to the sun. Aspects with the sun in lunar mansion talismans are usually always really great, especially the trines of the sextiles. The squares are fine as well, not as ideal because squares tend to be more difficult aspects, which means that the mode that the talisman's effects take effect by, like how the talisman works, basically what it does to bring what it is doing into reality. The mode that happens is a bit more difficult than it would be for the trine or the sextile. So whether that means that it takes more effort on the practitioner's part to make it work, or it just decides to take the hard way to do the thing, then that's kind of between you and the talisman to decide. But that's why you want to have square aspects with more agreeable planets, if you have to have square aspects, rather than more unagreeable planets, because that can be a fight and you don't want to fight anybody to get what you want. But the ruler of the first house is Saturn here in Aquarius, doing fine, not afflicted by Mars or Saturn in its sign of domicile. So all in all, just a pretty standard, pretty fine talismanic election. The only thing that's kind of unideal about it, or weird, I guess, is the Sun-Moon square. So as you can probably see, this is the chart that would ultimately become the Sun and Aries talisman in the Western European version. But because of the difference in the moon placement, the North American continent doesn't get it. As you can see here, the sun and the moon are like a degree apart in their square. And by the time, if I move it forward, by the time the sun gets to the ascendant, that's a little far, but by the time the sun gets to the ascendant here, the moon's already past that 16 degrees past the square. And that's why North America doesn't really have the Sun and Aries talisman. Whoops. So North America only had the one chart, unfortunately. And now switching gears to talk about the Australian continent, who has three. And our first one is going to be for March 30th at around 1:20 in the morning. And this is going to be an opportunity for an Arcturus fixed star talisman. And Arcturus is a fun star. It is a star that is one of the few stars that have very overt medical associations, and one of the few stars that are mentioned as being effective with or related to one of the four humors. Arcturus is associated with the blood and the sanguine humor, so it can be very useful, especially for individuals who are melancholic predominantly in their temperament naturally and want to have a more sanguine influence in their life. Arcturus talismans can be really helpful for that. But because of this close association with the blood and the sanguine humor and kind of what it does in the body, it also has sort of like these larger, more overarching and more specific medical uses that can be worth looking into. Because it is associated so much with the blood, Arcturus can be useful for blood health. Any situation where like blood diseases or like the purity, the strength, or the health of the blood are concerned, Arcturus can be very useful. Arcturus can also be very useful for liver diseases and for the health and viability of the liver. And for, kind of like any other situation where there's like a feeding or like a nutrition issue that needs to be addressed, Arcturus can be very useful for. So all in all, Arcturus is just like a really fun, protective, healing, healthful talisman, especially for individuals who are dealing with a blood or liver disorder, or who just are predominantly melancholic and need more healthy blood in their system because of that. So taking a look at our electional chart, we have 24 degrees of Libra on the midheaven, which is the projected ecliptical degree of the fixed star Arcturus. At the same time, the moon is applying a conjunction to that degree on the midheaven, while she is at the same time applying a trine to Jupiter, who is one of the planets that are said to be of the nature of Arcturus, that the Arcturus is said to be of the nature of. I really like this association, or this connection, primarily because Jupiter is itself also associated with blood and the sanguine humor and the liver, so we have kind of bringing in the planetary signification of that as well as the stellar one. So that's a kind of a nice combination to have. At the same time, we have the ascendant in Aquarius, another sign of the blood, being ruled by Saturn in Aquarius in the sign of the blood. So there's a lot of blood stuff going on here. A lot of blood symbolism that's actually very helpful and very positive, I think. At the same time, there's no afflictions with Mars. Like Mars isn't afflicting anything or getting involved in a poor manner. And Saturn is otherwise doing very well. So just a pretty nice electional fixed star talisman there for Arcturus, a star that we really don't think we've gotten to talk about very often, and one that definitely gets overshadowed by Spica, who is also in the 24 degrees of Libra, but Arcturus is good too. Our next opportunity is going to be on April 3rd at around 22:20 at night, and this is going to be the opportunity for a 22nd Lunar Mansion talisman. The 22nd Lunar Mansion is one that is primarily, in this context, because we're dealing with a waning moon, is going to be about freedom and escape, and we have kind of like a lot of room to move around with utilizing that and this talisman's power for that. So, we can talk about freedom and escape in a lot of different ways, in a lot of different contexts, and in a lot of different outlooks. A lot of times, to be very specific, I guess, the 22nd Lunar Mansion's main traditional power is the freeing of captives, for captives to be able to escape. And there are situations where that can be an issue, particularly individuals who have been imprisoned, particularly wrongly imprisoned. It could also be people who feel stuck or kind of captive in their own home, whether because of some sort of situation, a lack of mobility in some way, whether that's physical or financial or social, or due to kind of being kept by a potentially abusive individual or family member or whatever in the home. So we have that, which can be a very real, very, very true, very useful application of this talisman. It can also be utilized a little bit more metaphorically. Somebody who's stuck in a job they don't like, or stuck in some situation that they don't like, or somebody who feels captive by their own thoughts, or just any kind of situation like that. You can definitely utilize the 22nd Lunar Mansion to kind of get some freedom and some space, and hopefully a safe way out, should the situation call for it, from those things that are holding you back or keeping you in some sort of captivity, whether that's physical or literal or metaphorical. So definitely recommend the 22nd Lunar Mansion for anybody who is in any sort of situation where they feel like they might need an escape of some kind. Always good to have in your pocket. So taking a look at our electional chart, we have the moon in the 22nd Lunar Mansion, with conjoined the ascendant. At this time, she is applying that square to the sun. In Aries, squares are a little bit more difficult and kind of a little bit more scary in situations like this, I think. But with the sun, it's good to have. The sun's connections are always very helpful, even if they don't seem like it at first. Especially, squares with the sun are better than some of the other planets. At the same time, we've got the ruler of the first house as Saturn here in Aquarius. Saturn is not afflicted by Mars. The ascendant's not afflicted by Mars. The moon's not afflicted by Mars. Overall, it looks very good. And the only kind of meh thing about it is the square aspect between the moon and the sun, which I would definitely prefer a sextile trine in this context. So our final electional opportunity, both for the Australian continent and for our video today, is going to be on April 4th at around sunrise. I got it set for 6:42 a.m. here. And this is going to be that opportunity for for a Sun and Aries talisman, for a talisman for the sun and its exaltation of Aries. As I was saying in the European section of this video, if you watched that, or if you didn't watch that because you only watched the parts that are about your location, totally fine. The Sun in Aries is a combination that we haven't been able to have for a little while, for the past couple of years, because while Saturn was in Capricorn, of course, it was casting a square to the sign of Aries. So whenever the Sun entered Aries, we always ran the risk of bringing in an afflicted Sun that was, square Saturn at the time. So we weren't really able to have we weren't really able to have Sun and Aries talismans because of the presence of Saturn in Capricorn. Saturn has now moved into Aquarius, which opens up Aries for solar talismans, which is great, and is what we're going to lean into here. But now the Sun of Leo is closed off because Saturn is opposed Leo. So we traded out Sun and Leo talismans, Sun and Aries talismans. I'm not very happy about it, but it's what we have to work with now. So in our chart here, we've got the Sun in Aries, which is good. We want the Sun to be in a sign of domicile exaltation, or a sign it does well in. We want the Sun to be very angular, and we have the Sun conjoin the ascendant here. The Moon needs to apply to the Sun, which she does via square, and it needs to be the Sun's day or the Sun's hour. And since it is a sunrise on a Sunday, it is both the Sun's day and the Sun's hour. So we've checked all of our boxes here. The Sun is not afflicted by Mars or Saturn, which is great. The Moon is not afflicted by Mars or Saturn, which is great. The Ascendant is not afflicted by Mars or Saturn, which is great. The ruler of the first house in this chart is Mars, down here in Gemini. I don't worry so much about the nodes when it comes to planets that aren't the Sun and the Moon, because they are not eclipsed by the nodes. So I don't think it's that big of a deal. But if that's something that you're concerned about, definitely take into consideration. and don't let me kind of preach to you about what isn't good. But all in all, this is a pretty great chart for you being able to create a sun in Aries talisman if you're an individual who's been wanting one for a while, somebody who maybe has the sun natally in Aries or the sun natally in Leo. Can be very helpful to kind of get another perspective of it. If you're an individual with the sun in Libra or Aquarius, I do not necessarily recommend getting a sun in Aries talisman without first having done remedial work, or else you're just going to exacerbate a lot of the problems that you may be experiencing with or due to because of your debilitated sun in your natal chart. So that's the warning there, I guess. But other than that, a pretty solid election here. Again, as I've said several times, we really leaned heavily into the moon-sun square here because it's kind of like the big aspect, I guess we could say, for this 2-week period. And it kind of lines up things very nicely in a way that we can utilize. But, of course, trines or sextiles would have been better, but just because we're dealing with a square does not mean that it is bad. But all right, those were all of the electional opportunities that I have for you guys for this 2-week period. Everybody take care. I hope that you guys in Western Europe and Australia really enjoy those Sun in Aries talismans that you guys are going to have the opportunity to make, and just rub them just rub them in the faces of everybody in North America who was not able to make one because the moon will be separating from the sun at that time. Just go ahead and do that for everybody. That'll be fun. And everybody take care, and I will see you guys again on the Aries New Moon.